Well, thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate you all being here. I know that we haven't been using Zoom historically, and um,
It is shockingly difficult when we haven't used it a lot.
yeah, our organization uses Google Meet, and then I've never had this issue with Zoom in the past. So I see all of the cameras that are off. Chat pin, make a host, change role, rename. Hopefully, like I said, Hannah's the oh, we allow attendees to. Haha, you should be able to start your video now. Maybe try it. Oh, there you are. Yay, joyous occasion. Well, what a way to start. Okay, thank you all for joining. Jade, do you want to take it from
Sure.
here?
Yeah, thanks for figuring that out.
Yeah.
Are we live streaming for like
Yeah,
we do when we're in person as well?
Yeah, we are. So just like we're in person, the public meeting notice and everything on the website has a link to this Zoom session. So folks on the committee and our guests are here as panelists, and then people who are participating, just watching the stream, are listed as attendees. So yeah, people can tune in, which is great.
But it's
and then
not
starting
on
next
the school, like the YouTube channel.
Correct. And it hasn't, it wasn't for the last couple of ones. We've just been getting that integrated for the committee meetings. So starting next month, we'll be able to stream directly to YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, hi, everybody. I think we may be expecting a couple more committee members. Julia Brim-Edwards let us know that she had something come up unexpectedly, so she won't be joining us. But hopefully one or two of the other committee members will be here. Unless, Kat, did you hear from anybody else? Okay. Okay, well, maybe we can just start with a quick introduction. There's some new people here that aren't on a committee. So I'm Jane Kummel. I'm a PPS parent and chairing the Climate Crisis Response Committee. And maybe Monica, you're to my right. Do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Monica Fleischer. I use she, her pronouns. I work for the facilities department at the district and collaborate with Kat on policy implementation. All popcorn to Isaac.
Hi everyone, Isaac Barrow, parent PPS or room committee. I use he, him pronouns, and I will popcorn to Kat.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Kat Davis. I'm the advisor for climate justice, and I help with just keeping these meetings going and providing that district perspective on how we're moving forward our climate crisis response, climate justice, and sustainable practices policy. And I use she, her pronouns. I'll popcorn over to Charity.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Charity Fain, she, her pronouns, and also a parent. And I will go to Eric.
Hi, everybody. Eric Opsel. I use he, him pronouns. I'm on the committee and a parent of a PPS student. Over to Angela.
Hi, Angela Long. I'm a PPS parent of a middle schooler, and I will share it with Andrew.
Yes, hello. So I'm Andrew Dyke, he, him pronouns. I'm with Echo Northwest, and you'll be hearing from me in a little bit on our work with the district on the evaluation planning. And I will send it over to my colleague Jolie, also from Echo Northwest.
Hi, I'm Jolie Brownell, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a research analyst at ECHO working with Andrew. And I'll pass it on to Richard.
I see Richard says that he's driving right now, so he'll join when he is not in the car anymore. But so we've got Hannah is, I think, the last person on.
Sure. Hi, I'm Hannah Scott. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I'm the AmeriCorps member on our climate justice team, and I'll be taking notes, keeping meeting minutes during this. My camera's off, so you don't see my concentration face.
Thanks, everybody, for introducing yourselves, and thanks to the guests for being here tonight, taking the time to give us your presentations and share some information with us. The first item we had is the board update about the term extensions. And again, Julia apologizes that she can't be here, but she let us know that item was passed at the board. So those folks that are currently serving a one-year term are officially invited to extend for an additional 2 years. So thank you to those folks who will continue to serve on the committee. So that's a short item because Julie is not here to say anything else from the board. So we'll move right on to Monica Fleischer's presentation on waste standardization and green schoolyards. Thanks so much, Monica.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jane. Is it best if I share my screen? Okay.
Yeah, and let me. Okay, you should be able to share. So let me know if you have any issue. Yeah.
Bear with me. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. I may have logged in as a participant instead of a panelist, so that could be on me.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Oh, I can do it now.
You can do it now? Okay, great. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great.
Yep.
I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'm going to make you all smaller for now. Thanks for your patience. Okay. So as I mentioned, my name is Monica Fleischer. I work in the facilities department on the sustainability team. And I'll be going through some updates today on schoolyards as well as waste. I have some bullet points that I'll go into a little bit in detail, but I do want to be mindful to leave plenty of time for questions so we can dive more into really what you all are more interested in hearing about, rather than me getting caught in the weeds, which I can do pretty easily. And at the end of my presentation, I have some direct connections to the policy, so you can see where these items I'm going to mention directly connect to different policy goals. I won't go too much into policy language, but I do have that at the end of the presentation if you want to see those policy goals written out, in case that's helpful. So we'll get started with schoolyard updates. I'm going to go through each of these bullet points, but just a quick review of those. First, I would love to talk about data inventory that we are working on. So in 2019, we did the first phase of this data inventory for K-5 sites. We worked with a contractor who did site visits, along with drone overview shots and other kind of CAD drawings for us to get a great idea of what exists on our schoolyards, which is a huge part in tracking progress. As we've seen with any of the policy work, we have to know where we are to know where we're going and be able to measure that. In addition, it really helps us be strategic in how we're prioritizing our highest priority sites that may have higher heat island effects or higher percentages of asphalt. I've put in here in the lower left-hand part of the screen some metrics that we're using for this inventory. This is not all of the metrics, but it's just an example of how we may use these for other capital improvement projects or facilities-minded projects, in addition to how we're proactively partnering to transform these schoolyards into outdoor learning spaces, climate resilient spaces, and places where we can have that be a community hub. I will say that we're in the second phase of this, starting in the next few months here, that we're going to do middle schools. And the reason why we're focusing on those two grade levels first is just because we see a lot more of these projects happening at the elementary school level, often at the middle school level as well. But with high schools going through the bond improvement program, they're not as our focus areas, just because they will get that direct attention in those processes. So along with the inventory, a lot of that data is going into and has already gone into what is being developed as a district-wide schoolyard program. So this initiative is going to be an umbrella program for the district. We have a lot of fantastic initiatives that have been from the facilities department, out of climate justice, out of outdoor learning and Office of Teaching and Learning, but really bringing all of that together and making sure that there's maintenance involved, stewardship involved, and just a clear process for internal staff, but also external staff that may want to, external volunteers that may want to do a project on school grounds. This program also collaborates with our existing partners that are fabulous at providing education or doing greening projects on school grounds with students. So this is just a way to be better organized so we can be more proactive and effective in our impact. I will say as well, a piece of that program that is especially exciting are these vision plans. So we're calling this process a vision plan that takes an engagement process over a few months. We engage students, staff, families, and community members on what they want their schoolyard to look like. And we work with a contractor to take that engagement and put it into a landscape design that we know is PPS approvable, so it meets safety standards, material standards, and has those kind of code compliance check marks built in. These vision plans are first and foremost going to be for our high priority sites. We want to make sure that those unique school cultures are represented in the neighborhoods that they're in, and really serve the need for the students and staff that are there. So those are really exciting. The part of the slide that has some examples of what these vision plans look like, this is actually a smaller one. This is Roseway Heights Middle School. This is a great example of how the contractor with PPS was able to identify not only the projects that were identified over and over again through the engagement process, but the second photo, the lower one, actually shows what partners we're pulling in to help accomplish those projects. Oftentimes, facilities where I'm housed, we can help support parts of the project that we know we'll have funding for. So for example, safe play equipment that is age and developmentally appropriate for the students at the school. Other parts of the transformation in the vision plan is often through our fantastic partnerships. So we work with Friends of Trees, Urban Forestry, Bureau of Environmental Services, DPAVE, Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership. We have a great network of people that want to work on school grounds specifically to help us accomplish these goals. So those are just a few examples of these. And I have 2 more schoolyard slides, and then we'll change over to waste. Another really exciting initiative that we are really building out and starting to actually promote are these stewardship initiatives. So a lot of our work in schoolyards is so exciting when it's being developed and it's being planted perhaps, but the huge piece of it for the district is that we want to make sure we can take care of those spaces so that their ecosystems are healthy, so that students are regularly able to utilize them and engage with them. So the stewardship piece is really key for us at the district level. One layer of these initiatives is called the Adopt a Schoolyard Initiative that has 2 branches, one of which is business focused, where our Office of Strategic Partnerships is going to utilize the Fund for PPS to work with businesses to help build funds to support schoolyard transformations. The other branch of this initiative is through local community organizations. That looks like more like Solve is a great partner already that we've gotten to pilot a few sites with. So Solve has volunteers that go out and do things like weeding and pruning and mulching on the ground. So with those 2 branches, we feel like we'll have a deeper impact to both be able to fund those deeper transformations, but also maintain what may already be there in addition to maybe some smaller projects as well. If you all are familiar with our Community Care Day, that's also a stewardship initiative that we're expanding. So traditionally it has been in August before school starts, but Project Community Care is really how it started. And that intention is more than just a single day. We want to be able to invite people to campuses and have events supported by the district through yard debris collection, mulch being provided, helping recruit volunteers or help find tools if those are needed. So we want to make sure that the community knows that they're able to come more often than just that single day. If they're not ready to perhaps commit to a regular stewardship initiative like the Adopt a Schoolyard program, they can do more of these one-off projects through the Project Community Care. Another schoolyard update is a really wonderful partnership that we are building with Food Corps. So before this year, we have had and still have great partners in Grow Portland and Growing Gardens, both of which focus on garden education and food system education. They are either full-time or half-time educators in schools. Food Corps is going to be our third partner in providing outdoor learning for students that is very complementary with what teachers are providing in the classroom. And almost all three organizations' lessons actually meet the standards for required instructional minutes in the classroom. So in a way, this is actually taking a few things off the teacher's plate while still providing the education that we want to. Climate literacy is a big goal that's kind of woven through the policy. So this Food Corps partnership is a way to use food as a teaching tool, but it is also a way to teach things like social studies, math, science, health. And so it really is a broad spectrum of wonderful lessons that engage students hands-on and often outside. It's also really unique that it has a direct correlation to cafeterias and providing education around the food they see on their plate every day. So we're partnering with Food Corps to expand access to outdoor learning to Title I schools. So Growing Gardens and Grow Portland, I believe it's about 13 sites that are Title I that they partner with, in addition to a few sites outside of Title I category. But Food Corps is helping us partner with 6 more schools, potentially 9 more next year. And so we're excited to see this grow and get more students outside. More on that later if you might have questions.
And Charity has her hand up. So I want to
I'm so sorry. Yes, please.
Yeah, I had a question. I know my kids go to Sunnyside Environmental, and we have a very small footprint. And we have, one of the schools that is in the shared space agreement with Portland Parks.
Right.
So how is that something that you guys are dealing with? Because I know from our school, like those shared space agreements mean there's very limited things we can often do. So like, is that, every time we, every so often, every couple of years, somebody wants to like change those agreements, and we always have to explain it's a master agreement between the district and parks. So I'm just kind of curious about how that shared space agreement, if there's any discussions around how to do this to like, or is that just something that's not going to be touched?
Sure. That's a great question. There are a lot. I mean, we often see that in like big, large fields that are intended for athletic programming or other large space programming. Our real estate department, who sits on our floor next to my cube, they do manage that agreement with Parks and Recreation. That is something I believe that they renew every 10 years, and they are in agreements leading up to a renewal coming up. I'm happy to go back to that team and get more information to provide to Kat so she can disperse it to you all. I'm not as familiar with what that'll look like. There is a lot of opportunity on schoolyards to make a deep impact, even if it's not the entire campus. And I don't mean that as if we're not considering the entire campus, but we do recognize that we have a great relationship with parks. And so I don't know how much wiggle room is there for those particular sites. But I do know there are a few sites that are reconsidering those agreements because they're not used as intended. So for example, if we thought we were going to have 2 baseball leagues and a football league and we didn't, then it's just sitting there. So why not have that be more in PPS hands to have be for student use? So that's something I'll learn more about and would love to share back.
Yeah. And then I had a question, like the PTA at Sunnyside pays for and fundraises to cover a sustainability garden coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's becoming increasingly difficult. And then with some of the new changes that might go down, are those kinds of positions ones that might be rolling out across the district, or is that something that like, the school potentially will just lose and we'll have to deal with it? Because that is a school that's been doing this type of work for many, many years now and has so much rich learnings and knowledge about how to run these type of programs.
For sure. So we also look to Sunnyside for a lot of that leadership. Dilafruz Williams, who helped found Sunnyside, is one of my mentors from Portland State. So incredibly inspiring to see that be a model for how we can roll out that kind of position in a sustainable way at scale. I don't think those positions would be going away, but I do know that they're funded by your school budget, I believe, in addition to maybe PTA funds, you said.
It's PTA funds that pays for the sustainability.
The whole thing.
coordinator.
Okay.
Whole thing. Yeah. The whole garden program is paid for by PTA funds.
For sure. So that is something that honestly is one of my goals to work towards. We really want to build these, I don't love calling them wins, but building these wins and showing what outdoor education can look like. There's large concerns, understandably, from a lot of our educators and school leadership that we can't take away from instructional minutes that really is required. And so we're going to make the case this upcoming year with more outdoor learning partners that, hey, this actually meets instructional minute standards and can be this relief in a way to some of the classroom educators. And so we're hoping to make that case moving forward where we do see someone on every school campus that is at least facilitating outdoor learning. That is something I'm really hoping for. Awesome. I also want to be mindful of time because that took way long, not your question, but my presentation is a little bit longer than I thought. So I'm going to do these a little more in brief. Thank you for also noticing a hand. Please do unmute or someone call out if anyone else has questions. I wanted to let you all know that we are in the process of applying to an EPA grant that is specific to the Lower Columbia region in partnership with Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership. This would be to basically have capital projects, so very large scale projects that would be stormwater management related. Really, that would trickle down to deep paving and planting to control our runoff on site, in addition to providing outdoor education in those planted areas. That's something that Lower Columbia is actually spearheading the application on, but we would benefit from and have been in communications on which sites that could possibly be and what PPS can contribute. So stay tuned on that. I'm crossing our fingers that we can hopefully be an applicant that is competitive. That would really be a large scale benefit to several sites. Something else we're considering, we're in conversations with the city around a tree lighting project that they're doing to help light street trees to have be more sidewalks and just more areas of the city that could potentially benefit from more active forms of transportation. So that could be more bike friendly, more walking friendly. On PPS campuses, that would be more of the perimeter trees that are in the right of way. So they are street trees. Having that would benefit PPS in a way that we want to have our campuses be welcoming. And a way to do that is also to deter vandalism or any kind of other shenanigans that may happen on campus that are safety hazards. So this is something we're considering because they are in partnership with urban forestry. So this makes sure that it puts the health of the tree first, but it also is something that could benefit pedestrians and cyclists. Okay, we'll move on to waste.
Oh,
Question.
Isaac has a hand.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Real
Okay.
quick question on schoolyards. I know I'll try to make it brief. Not sure if parking lots are considered part of schoolyards, but I was wondering if there, in that assessment phase, if there was any evaluation of parking lot use and opportunities to reduce pavement through parking lot.
Yes. Yes. So that is included in that inventory we are doing. That is a great feedback, honestly. I should say more school campuses than I should say schoolyards. It's a school campus audit to find out how much asphalt, and even if it's a high parking area where there is parking needed, that doesn't mean that there can't be opportunities for median strips or other vegetation and plantings there. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So for waste, a few things I wanted to mention is that this coming week, actually for spring break, we are completing our container sensor installations. That's the lower right-hand side. I think it's the same orientation for you all as well. The lower right-hand side of this slide, we have waste sensors through a partnership with Resource Synergy, who is out of Spokane, Washington. The sensors themselves are through a third party, which is called Anevo, which is what you see on one of those logos down there. But these sensors are very small. They look kind of like a minion from Despicable Me that go inside of every waste dumpster at every site. And so from a facility standpoint, this largely helps us save costs, making sure that we're getting the service that is scheduled, but that we're not over servicing containers. So if it's not full, then we won't service it. So this saves on carbon emissions for trucks coming to campuses and leaving campus, but it also helps with safety. Just having less trucks on campus is always a good thing. From a sustainability standpoint and climate justice standpoint, this is really helpful in providing us better waste data that we're not able to get from the waste hauler. This will help us be more mindful of how full containers are, but if a school, for example, is interested in the food scrap collection program or really wants to expand their recycling efforts, this is our way to provide data for even classroom use on saying, okay, let's initiate your program and let's see the difference. Let's see the levels change, the haul number change, and ultimately get our diversion rate into a higher percentage where we're seeing food scraps, recyclables, yard debris, et cetera, increase and seeing landfill decrease. So really excited for this project. It'll be live. It already is live with our 40 sites we have so far, but we're doing 373 more sensors next week. And it'll probably be a few weeks before we really feel like we have the data accurate, where the sensors are live and we're tracking, but we hope to make all of that also live on our energy and utility dashboard, where you can see all of those waste amounts per day, per school, or for the campus as a whole, or for the district as a whole, excuse me. So that's really exciting. And I'm glad that that's expanded to all sites. Additionally, we have fabulous partners in nutrition services that have had to really go through code regulations on their end. And so a lot of their reusable programs are coming back on board. Schools are ready to take more of them on. Staff capacity inside schools is loosening a bit to take this on, to just get it started, and to have that educational piece for students where the students can kind of self-run the program after the first few weeks. So from our team, we're also helping expand utensil use this spring with support from our AmeriCorps. That's a really exciting project, just to have tangible change in the cafeteria every day for a lot of students. We are focusing on K-5 right now, solely because those students stay in the cafeteria most of the time. In previous years, because of COVID, they were all over the school. And so collection of reusables was a pretty tough ask for a lot of school staff who were already over capacity. So those are some photos of our waste sorting stations, just to give a little bit more context. The last few waste updates I want to mention, I'm working with CAT to actually do a bin standardization pilot. So this is a direct policy goal. Those are two photos at the top from some different kind of quotes or bids that we've gotten from a few different organizations, just examples. This is really exciting because we know that this is a lacking foundational piece in a lot of our sites where bins look different, signage isn't there, etc. So right now we're in the process of gathering the different examples of how it could look and getting custodial feedback. And we'll do a pilot at a few sites, hopefully next year, but we'll have to see how the feedback process goes. We know that supply chains are still having challenges, so I don't want to promise next year, but I am hopeful that next year we'll be able to do this. We also had a fabulous DEQ partnership with Astor K-8 doing a food waste project. We also collaborated with Portland State students who you see in the orange vests in the bottom photos. They did a waste audit for us over a week period where they collected the different food and they gave us all that data, which tremendously helps our engagement and our education pieces with students and staff. So we can say, we're noticing this much X, Y, and Z. So we know that when we go into classrooms or talk to different staff, that is something specific we can mention. They also were able to do the partnership also involved a third party who did food waste curriculum. And so the second waste sort happened after the curriculum was implemented. So we're waiting on those data results from Portland State, and we're excited and hopeful to see that there is a decrease in wasted food after having more in-classroom time talking about food waste. Lastly, we have a lot of materials at PPS that end up becoming outdated, unfortunately. Previously, a lot of the end of school processes can be fairly chaotic when people are leaving to go on summer break, and they will be out of touch with us. And so a lot of materials ended up in the garbage unnecessarily, but we are expanding our outreach and rollouts for recycling textbooks that are outdated and not able to be used by other organizations, our first step is always reuse and reutilization. But if we're not able to find an outlet for those, we are able to recycle them. This goes to a special facility actually called Paper People in Vancouver, Washington. So it's also locally processed, which is really great. So that's kind of a waste update in a nutshell-ish. And this is a very general overview of the policy connections, but on this next slide, I have all of the bullet points from schoolyards and waste with the different policy connections as well. Appreciate your attention. I know that was a little bit longer than I think I was allowed on the agenda.
That's okay. No,
okay.
we have you till 6:05, so we have 2 more minutes, but people chipped in with questions along the way.
Wonderful.
Yeah, does anybody else have questions for Monica? Or comments about green
I'm happy to go backwards. Yeah, I know that was a lot. Hopefully in a good way. We think so.
I just appreciate you coming and sharing your updates, Monica. As I think we've discussed with this committee, folks have been really excited to see like what is the district doing, and as we're gathering all of our baseline data, and that's what Echo Northwest is going to be talking with us about here shortly. We wanted to be able to bring in different district departments and leads to say, while all that process is happening, this is the stuff that we're actually doing on the ground and what it looks like. And so it's great to be able to have you here to share, especially with the pictures. It's always so fun to see the kids with the shovels and stuff.
Most definitely. Thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll hang out a little bit just because I'm curious too, to hear the next folks, but really appreciate your time and attention and all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Kat, I wonder if you'd like to give a little bit of an intro for our next guests from Echo Northwest.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you all are aware, having in the last couple meetings, we've been talking about ways that the district can be providing this committee with data around our policy goals to better inform our, I just see where we all, 1 second, I'm gonna move in. There we go. Sorry, where we just joined us, so hello, welcome. Anyway, so we've been working with you all about how to wrap our heads around how to best visualize the data that we have, and also what kinds of data that we would like to be collecting to show progress on our policy goals. And as part of that process, we are working with Echo Northwest, who's here to join us, to be able to, and they'll talk you through exactly what it is that they're up to, but they're a great evaluator firm that Portland Public Schools has partnered with before on coming up with different evaluation tools for other projects. And our goal is really to be able to come up with a way of measuring our district data around the policy in a way that is usable by the administrators that are overseeing the data, as well as like understandable from the perspective of the public and the committee that is going to be making sure that we're making progress on our goals, and also help us wrap our head around the best ways to prioritize all of these different competing goals that we have, given impact and feasibility. So yeah, that's my quick update, and I think Andrew and Jolie will be able to provide a really comprehensive view of what all of that will actually look like. So thanks for joining us.
Great, thanks, Kat. Yeah, so I'm going to try to bring up my slides here, just a few, and I apologize, Monica's slides were much more colorful, have many more pictures than I do. All you'll get to see in terms of pictures are my face again and Jolie's face. But yeah, I did just want to spend a few minutes here giving you a quick overview of how we're framing in our heads the work that we're doing to support the district's work, and just sort of talk you through the steps and the timeline, and to give you a little information throughout this process. It's actually fairly short. Will be done in June, but there's a few meetings like this with the committee, and really are very interested in engaging with you all, and on or offline, just to make sure that we're receiving your wisdom as well. So just very quickly, again, I'm Andrew Dyke. I'm a partner and economist here at Echo Northwest. The firm itself, as Kat mentioned, we do a lot of evaluation in a lot of different areas. We work in planning, in environmental economics, and so on. So we have a lot of staff resources that speak to, basically all the issues we're going to be looking at. My colleague, Melissa Rowe, is the project manager. She's not able to be here tonight. She I've been working with her for about a decade on a number of all kinds of social policy questions, educational evaluations, and so on. Whoops, and let me bring up the big slides here so you can see a little bit better. Also on our team is Jay Matante. He's not able to be here. He has a lot of the same skills, but also has some focus and deep expertise in environmental and natural resource economics that brings an important perspective to the team. And then I'll just turn it over very briefly again to Jolie to give just a quick overview of her background.
Yeah, so I'm Jolie, and I'm a research analyst, and I specialize in qualitative data analysis, social policy, and also racial equity. And so I'm making sure that, equitable considerations are, integrated in our policy analysis. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so then just again, very quickly, we'll get into a few details, but not very many. Just a quick slide here on our purpose. The district has a very ambitious, commendable climate crisis response policy, and has done a lot of work before bringing us on board, has done a lot of work to separate some big, ambitious, overarching goals into a large number of sub-goals and activities. You heard about some of that just a minute ago from Monica. And I think we see our role as really helping the district to package all those pieces together into a consistent high-level framework that will allow the district to both sort of plan for measurement activities over the next few years out to 2040, long-range plan here, and really conduct that sort of evaluation that allows the district to understand its own progress, but also to communicate out back to the community and the people that ultimately benefit from success here. So we'll be going through a number of steps to figure out where things stand. And again, the district through CAT has already done a considerable amount of work collecting data sources, measuring, sort of where the district is or was in very recent years as a baseline, because to set useful goals, we need to know where we're starting from before we can really figure out where we're getting to. I'll walk you through the steps we're going to take, but again, that we're basically done with our work in June 2023. I'll end up with an evaluation plan for the district that lays out a bunch of different pieces. We'll have some summary documents of our progress throughout over the next three months. And again, are very interested in your input on any and all aspects of this. Okay, just a few things that you're already familiar with, but again, just taking steps down that road into building out a framework. You're really starting with, depending on how you count, really three big overarching goals, a very well-defined emissions reduction target, net zero by 2040. That's a very firm line in the sand, if you will, and we can think about whether it's incremental progress year by year or accelerated progress up front that tapers. Pretty easy to think about, at least drawing a trajectory to that net zero, and then obviously you have to figure out how to get there. And then another important goal on engagement, resilience, wellness, both helping communities and students adapt, learn about the potential impacts of the climate crisis, as well as helping build resilience. I think that's a place where the goals are a little bit less well-defined. There is no 100% resilience, 100% education, but we want to build out the infrastructure to set meaningful targets in that domain. And the whole enterprise obviously centers racial equity and climate justice. And so we want to bring those principles to bear as we're considering data sources, considering activities, considering targets. Won't bore you with the numbers. There's a bunch of well-defined sub-goals and activities associated with each pillar. We'll be working with all those to a greater or lesser degree, but do have some boundaries around what we're doing in terms of this evaluation planning. For both pillar 1 and pillar 2, we'll be looking at each of those sub-goals, trying to identify sort of that baseline information, data sources that can inform on district progress over the next years, all the years out to 2040. And thinking about ways to measure the inputs, the outputs, and outcomes of each goal. We're taking a lighter touch on that third pillar, largely about environmental and sustainability education, and our focus there will really be on access to educational opportunities, availability of educational opportunities, and helping the district think about how to measure and ensure that the opportunities are equitably distributed, that everyone has access to them. And as well that the benefits of all of the activities are distributed in an equitable way. So in terms of process, kind of broke our scope out into 5 different steps. We're deep in the information gathering phase, again, largely through CAT's efforts, reviewing the data the district has already collected and plans to collect in terms of where things stand now, getting insight into what kinds of information might be more or less readily available in the near term to measure progress towards goals, and then using all that collected information to define some evaluation metrics. What are we going to measure that will communicate both internally and externally in terms of the district's progress towards those big picture and sub goals? Based on those metrics, we will end up ultimately propose evaluation activities. So think measurement activities. What kind of data collection does the district need to commit to in the coming years to accurately measure progress on the metrics? How often does that measurement happen? And provide some insight into the potential cost, because it's not free to collect a lot of data. Surveys are not free, et cetera. So want to think about the cost of data collection as well as we're moving through this. And then setting meaningful targets that are important at the sub-goal level, but should ultimately connect and tie into those big picture aspirational goals at the top, the emissions reduction, community resilience, et cetera, and trying to develop a framework and an evaluation plan ultimately that brings all that together in a way that PPS can implement and move forward with going in the coming years. Okay, so next couple of slides, just to give you, I won't dwell on all of the words here, but just give you a sense of where we are and where we're headed. Again, I mentioned we're in the information gathering phase. You can see a couple of blurry screenshots, a lot of spreadsheets involved. And what we're trying to do is bring together information associated with each of the sub goals under each of the pillars and each of the goals that helps us understand the baseline and what's possible in terms of measurement going forward. And I want to focus on this flow chart in the middle here. So on the left is sort of the information gathering phase. Where are we? But then I think it's important to take a step back and think about what's possible in the near term versus the longer term if we're to have any success. First is thinking about, for each of the activities, the goals and the sub goals and the activities, what's a reasonable activity? And this is it's an important but fairly coarse goal. Think about electrification of the district's vehicle fleet, right? We're very interested, obviously, in the benefits. That's going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's important. We also need to think about the costs of doing that. There is a cost to electrifying a fleet, and you can say the same thing about every sub goal in the plan. Some costs are relatively small. We might be able to achieve emissions reductions through routine maintenance, through funds that are probably already budgeted. Other things will be more costly, either because funds are not directly immediately available, or because it's just very expensive to address a certain source of emissions or community resilience. After going through that exercise, and it's all approximate, some costs and benefits are not well defined, not easy to calculate, but we have to do the best we can. And then we want to take a look across the goals and think about, well, where do we see opportunities for high benefit, relatively low cost interventions, the low hanging fruit, because you can't go forward full speed on every sub goal from every direction, because there are limited resources, there's limited budgets out there, and it's important to prioritize. Again, keeping in mind in the upper right here, principles of environmental justice, racial and climate justice, to make sure that as we're prioritizing these activities, given the limited resources, that we're meeting the mandate and the requirement for environmental justice. And ultimately, though, this gets us to sort of short-term and long-term measures of inputs, outputs, and outcomes. I'll just pause there. That was a lot of words, so see if there are any questions before I move on. Great.
I have a question.
Yep.
So you have a very analytical process, and I can tell, you're really applying on the last slide, like, how do you think quantitatively about getting to those net zero by 2040? When you think about applying your environmental justice or your DEI lens, what type of data and tools are you using for that?
Yeah, so I'll let Julie step in if she wants to. We do have within the firm, we have an equity framework that we apply to all of our work, and in terms of you know, a lot of it's recognizing the limitations in data. You know, we can collect a lot of data, but if it's not accurate, if it does not reflect, you know, the experiences of people that you know, sort of we're trying to measure impacts on, then we're not going to get good answers.
So are you referring to like your data set coming from US Census data?
For example, yes. Yeah, well,
Okay.
yes, for sure. Yes, no, I mean, well-recognized limitations in census data set. It's information, it's what we have in a lot of cases, but we recognize that it's not perfect and has
Have
a lot of
you
problems.
thought applying tools like the US DOE's LEAD tool? Justice 40 has their mapping tool that you could pull data sources in. And then another good one, another two, if you haven't used them, EPA has an environmental justice screen tool, and Green Link Equity Map is a good one as well.
Yeah, those are good. I'm not familiar with all of them, but I have used the environmental justice screening tool. So yes, absolutely want to take advantage of those resources as they're out there. Thank you. And of course, it's not just about the data sets. It's, you know, there are many broader considerations there that we need to bring to bear.
Yeah, Andrew, actually, sorry, that reminds me. You earlier mentioned surveys. Is that going to be a way that you collect data? Because you're right, the data sources are not, you know, always a great way, a great indication of specific needs for each school. So are you thinking surveys for specific areas?
Well, I think so. I mean, in this phase, we will not be conducting surveys. It's very short. You know, we're laying the groundwork, but I think surveys should be on the table in terms of potential information gathering tools. Yeah, as a recommendation. But keeping in mind that, you know, if you design a good survey once, then it's there. But administering a survey has a burden. People responding to a survey, that takes time, and that's not always something that, you know, if you're a teacher, teachers get surveyed all the time, and I know that, you know, the surveys that teachers respond to often can be seen as a burden. So we do want to keep the costs of that data collection in mind.
So is it cost or is it survey fatigue that you're concerns?
Yeah, I mean, so yes, there's a downside to too much surveying, but sometimes the data point is so important that we, you know, that it's worth doing. If that makes sense. And I think the point here is we need to think about, you know, sort of the benefits of the activity, whether it's in terms of greenhouse gas emissions or collecting data for the evaluation of those activities against the potential cost, whether it's financial cost to implement a mitigation activity or approach, or the burden placed on individuals, whether it's staff or respondents to a survey as they're moving through this.
Thanks. Andrew, sorry, I'm asking questions from place of my expertise, not just as a parent. So sorry about that.
No, appreciate it.
Other great questions, Angela. And I was hoping that you could put the information in the chat around the equity frameworks that you mentioned. Well, you mentioned the Justice 40, the EPA, EJ Screen, Green Link Equity, and there was one more.
US DOE LEAD tool. Maybe it has tribal data, which is why I like it.
Yes, the tribe.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Great. So I do want to be cognizant of everybody's time. I think we're running up against the end of this particular piece, but I will spend a couple more minutes walking through the rest of the slide relatively quickly. Main point of this here, we talked about sort of getting through to metrics in the prior slide. Here, we want to take those metrics and actually implement the activities, the tracking and the measurement. There's some feedback loops in here. It's important to keep in mind that the data that are available today are as useful as they can be, but 5 years from now, there might be better data, or we might want different data because either the world has changed or we've made progress in some areas, but not others. And it's important to, you know, sort of revisit a lot of the decisions. So the evaluation is a living thing and responds to, you know, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the district, what's happening in the community. So then in terms of goal setting, I've already mentioned this, this is a different set of 3 goals, apologies. A sort of 3-pronged set of goals: greenhouse gas reductions, I'd say relatively easy to think about what the endpoint is and then track backwards and turn it into high-level goals that ultimately need to be allocated across the various activities that the district's undergoing, the sub-goals. Other aspects, health, wellness, and resiliency, and education. There's really no obvious endpoint there, but we do need to come up with meaningful goals so that we can have a measurement that says the district is making enough progress or not. And then defining a path to that success point, keeping in mind the benefits and costs of the activities and the measurement activities, as well as the resources that are available to complete the work. What does our final deliverable look like? We'll be producing an evaluation plan that'll combine all of the information that I've talked about. We'll end up with a logic model that just sort of helps codify in a framework all the various activities, the things that the district is planning to do to reach those aspirational goals, with some commentary on theory of action, why those activities are going to work, the evaluation metrics, ultimately translate that into the sort of net zero or a well-educated, resilient set of communities within the district. And then detail out the evaluation activities and timeline and recommendations for targets, for additional data collection if we see big holes that we think could be filled either in the short term or the long term, and any additional considerations. So that's sort of it. Happy to stick around to answer questions as long as the moderator allows, but then you have questions.
We can take some more time for this. Thanks for the presentation, Andrew. That was really informative. And I checked in with Kat. We don't have public comment tonight, so we can easily take those 10 extra minutes for any more questions for Andrew and Julie.
Yeah, looks like Eric has a hand up.
Sure, I can jump in. Thanks for all this initial work and the upcoming work. This will be really important to helping us along the way. I had a question in these cases, and you mentioned it a little bit on the last slide, but the sort of retroactive quality for that 2018-29 baseline. I assume some of that will be there, but some of that will be challenging to have. So I was wondering how that works in some of those spaces where I assume not all the data will be there.
Right. Yeah, I think we're all going to have to live with the imperfect. Data don't always exist. I think what's most important is finding a baseline that, with better data collection, maybe we find out that we were wrong or whatever, and be willing to revisit. But doing the best we can in terms of setting those baselines. That makes sense. Great. Charity has a hand up.
Yeah, I guess I'm not quite sure how to phrase this. I guess you talked a bit about part of the analysis and part of you're looking at what you're doing is around costs. And I get that there's going to be costs for any of the work we do, or the school district does. But I work a lot in energy efficiency and energy justice. And I find often when it's like really an economic model that's used, it becomes an excuse for really not doing more climate justice work, because it's going to cost no matter what. It's going to cost a lot of money. So like costs to me are not just about money. There are a lot of kind of, social costs of delay, right? Like how, if the longer we take, the bigger societal impact it will have as a cost. So like, I'm just kind of curious, like if you use just a strict economic model, it doesn't always capture those kind of costs, and they are costs. And I, just my own experience working in this in a different field in like residential energy efficiency is, I just don't, worry about that kind of economic model overtaking, because yes, there is a budget and there are money considerations, but there's a lot of other costs besides dollars.
No, that's exactly right. And we do take a sort of a fairly expansive perspective on cost, because all costs are important. And in some sense, some of those things are things that could be mitigated through successful climate action. So they turn into benefits in some sense. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think we do want to take into account, to the extent possible, all the potential costs of action and inaction. And that's complicated, but I think certainly important in terms of that prioritization step that I'm talking about, where it's not strictly speaking just a budget you're allocating, but thinking about if I can do a certain amount of things and where do I go first, right?
So
And
piggybacking.
Do you mind if I just really quick provide a little bit of perspective too? I just wanted to jump in with that as well. And the reason why we went with hiring or bringing on an economic evaluator firm is because part of the question the district is trying to ask is just how much is this going to cost? Okay, we're going to do it, but how much money do we need to be advocating for at the legislator and with bonds, and just trying to plan out the future of how can we pair this with grants or private partnerships, but just being able to really take a deep breath and look at the figures that we have to work with, I think are going to empower us to better be able to advocate for the resources that we need to make this happen. So I think that's part of why I think that part's going to be really helpful, not necessarily to fully make the decision as to whether or not to do something based on cost, but to just make sure that we're fully prepared for the resources that we're going to need to be finding in order to make the necessary actions happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry to jump in there, Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Kat. Piggybacking off of that and Charity's comment, I'm looking at the scope and what was provided. I did feel like it was a very quick turnaround time for the economic analysis that's going to be, that we're hoping to get out of it. And mostly my concerns, and I guess why I was asking so many questions about what tools you'll be using to look at equity, is because that benefits side of the economics is really hard to quantify because they're very qualitative, right? What is the benefit to society, community, the students at large? And I'm wondering, I saw that was in your flow chart as you had cost and benefits there. If there's a consideration of looking at the total cost, I get, Kat, what you're saying. I think that's really important. We have to know, we have to budget for this, right? If we want to do it. But how do you make those trade-offs when you're making those investments? What decisions are we going to make, and how do we make those with the best data possible? And so, Andrew, I guess my question is, have you started to think about how you might quantify some of these really hard to quantify benefits with that equity analysis? And then piggybacking on it, you mentioned earlier that there was a light touch to the education component, and just some of these things kind of concern me. And when we think about the magnitude of this project and how quickly the work's gonna get done and what it might inform later down the road. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. And I'll work backwards because my memory is short, and please ask again if I miss something. But yeah, in terms of the education component, I don't want to undervalue, but I think so. What we're not proposing to do is say develop a detailed plan and or do an evaluation of a curriculum that's implemented. Did students learn X, Y, or Z? That's sort of a different exercise than how we're seeing this evaluation plan for the policy itself, which is so we talked to CAD and Liz Gilkey and agreed that was an appropriate boundary for this particular work. The district, obviously, if they're spending money on things like curriculum, you want to know if they're working or not. But that's
great. So it's not that it's not getting
to say it won't
done,
happen,
it's
but
just
it's not part, that's it, right.
Yeah, not part of this project. Okay,
exactly.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep. And then you ask about quantifying other hard to quantify benefits. I think we're not. I'll let Jolie step in. She's been working on that aspect a little bit if she wants to, but I think we're not far enough along to be able to say exactly how far we'll be able to go. But I think from an economic perspective or any others, it's important to be able to, quantify as much as possible, sort of apples to apples in terms of all the costs and benefits of given activities, and recognize where there are holes there, where, we know there's an impact of some kind, but no one's really cracked the nut of how to measure that, and at least recognize that as an important part of the output here. So I think part of what we've agreed to do, we'll end up with some recommendations that kind of lay out here are some things that we did not have the capacity to address in this 6-month window, but that the district needs to pay attention to and maybe look into, investigate further, beyond June 30th, if that makes sense.
I can step in and just provide just a couple examples, as I've been helping kind of with this information gathering and kind of baseline stuff. And as far one of the examples is one of the goals has to do with increasing, with the cafeteria food, the sourcing of local produce, and trying to increase that. And as far as like an equitable question that has to do with that is that, local produce that is less packaged usually is more expensive. And so as far as what is the benefit of increasing, our sourcing of local foods, if students of color, lower income students can't access that food because it costs more and they have to pay more at lunch in order to access that kind of food. And so like we've included in our analysis, okay, yes, like what will it cost to increase local sourcing of, of local foods with less packaging, but also what is the potential cost on, students who are greatly impacted by the affordability of lunch and school lunches. And so that's part of our questions is that. And then also as far as just like a racial justice for school events, for catering, like what does it mean to locally source produce for that, or just foods and vendors, but is making sure that that is equitably done, looking at the percentage of events that are catered by BIPOC restaurants. And so that is all in our analysis. It's a very specific one that I can remember looking at. But there's others too that we're just including. And a lot of the questions that help us think about this is who are the students, who are the families, what is the geography of the people who are most impacted by these certain policies and goals? And then how will our mitigation strategies or ideas and our targets impact these specific communities? And how do we make sure that we include that in our analysis? Now, they're mainly just questions right now, but we're hoping that through our analysis and through our work and these next few months that we can begin to place some targets and mitigation strategies to go along with that.
Thank you.
I think we could take time for one more question if anyone had anything else they want a clarification on or comments about. Okay, well, thank you again, Andrew and Julie, for taking the time this evening to talk to us about this scope of work. I think there's so much intersection with our committee, and I think I can speak for all of us that we'll really look forward to seeing what you come up with. And to the extent that we can be helpful, I think we would all be happy to chat offline or do what we can to support the work. And definitely will be keen to see how this progresses. So thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, and appreciate the input and the feedback. And yeah, do look forward to being back in front of you again and potentially interacting offline. So thank you.
Great. Okay, well, the next topic for tonight is updates from the subcommittees. So hopefully we'll have a little spokesperson from each committee. Eric, did you want to speak to any updates on the dashboard or that committee?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, and feel free, anybody, Isaac or anyone else, to chime in. But I think it was discussed in the last meeting when I was out. But I think we'll continue. I think the work that just was described will be obviously the critical component to helping us identify how that dashboard will work. It's great to see the focus on both the subgroups and then the upper group levels so that we can get that identification. But I think the key as this is created is to make sure that it's in a visible way for us to be able to understand how they're tracking towards those goals. So I think that'll be something that I think all of us should continue to look at as they get closer into identifying those, is how we identify a little bit like what we talked about last time of how green, yellow, red, or however we want to do that, they're tracking towards that. But it's good to see how each of those subgroups can then lead up to how we're reaching our pillars. But I think a lot of our work in this subcommittee will then build off what's created by this in the coming months.
Thanks, Eric. The budget input subcommittee, I think that's Barbie and Diane, who's not here. Barbie, could you speak to that?
Yes, I haven't connected with Diane. And so I'm hoping that we will connect. She's not here today, but I'm hoping that we can connect within the next week, and then we can send an email update if that's helpful. Haven't done any when we connect, but I think once we connect, then we'll be able to give you an update around the framework and deliverables and timeline.
Sounds good. Is there anybody who could speak to the community engagement subcommittee? Isaac, Richard, Eric, Diane, Angela.
But he already gave the dashboard update. Diane actually convened this, but she's not here, so I'm happy to give a quick update on her behalf. We just had the first meeting. Not everybody on the subcommittee was able to attend, but it was a really good session on kind of trying to define what it is we're trying to achieve, like what our goals and what a reasonable work plan for the calendar year would be. Diane started a draft that she shared with those of us that were able to attend, and I think I'm the last person that owes her feedback on that draft, after which her intent was to send it to the larger committee to get feedback on it as well. And I think we also, I don't know how official it needs to be, but we had a brief discussion given our past experience. I think we nominated Diane to be the chair of the subcommittee. She has a really good experience engaging on the community side, and she'll be a really big asset in that role, I think. Eric, is there anything you'd like to add? Or?
I think the draft when that comes out, but I think like Isaac, you had a really good way of like kind of focusing the work on this. I think you mentioned like it felt like the two key activities were to inform the public, and then also then how do we provide that feedback. So Kat, I think we were kind of looking towards like you and Julia of how that best accomplishes that, the feedback mechanism, and then the inform mechanism was a lot about what is the actual scope of this engagement, of like how we reach out or what programs are already built. And I think everything feels back to the policy itself. So we also discussed the engagement, core of the engagement, right, would be as the policy says, prioritizing how we're reaching out to people with disabilities, communities of color, and other vulnerable populations, and how we do that in that space. But there'll be more to come off the draft.
Yeah, and really, I mean, I don't want to go too deep, but the realization was that there's a opportunity for the committee on the inform side. That one of the observations about the Buckman discussion in the first couple of meetings was that really what was lacking was a deeper community understanding of the excellent work that had already been done by the school and different PPS staff and the facilities group. And so therefore there's a community engagement role that needs to be played that this group can help with, which is very much on the inform side, to help community members, especially targeted populations, be more informed about the good work that's already taking place.
Thank you. That all sounds interesting, and looking forward to seeing what you come up with for an outline and a plan. Charity and I are the fourth subcommittee on board report, and Charity, please chip in where you like. We've been talking just on email so far about an outline for the board report, and we're trying to get a meeting with Julia Brim-Edwards to get a sense of kind of board expectations for a report like this, and what the appropriate length and content would be. So we're hoping to do that in the next week or two. I want to add that like time is kind of the essence for this, mostly because we have only one more meeting scheduled for a committee, which is April. It's like April 27th, let's just say the 4th Thursday in April. And then, so that's our only opportunity to bring to the committee a draft report for everybody to vote on, or, to approve. And obviously we'll do our best to give you time for input in advance of the meeting, but that's our hard deadline. We're planning to, and have been in touch with the board liaison, like the administration person who looks after the agendas, and she's expecting us at I think it's the June 12th board meeting, which is coincides with the last day of school. Not that that matters, but so one thing that
is that when you say us, you mean like us as a committee, or you?
Well,
like, do we need to put this on our calendars?
You don't have to. Everybody's welcome, and it would be the more the merrier, and it would be nice to have that support. But no, you don't need to be there. I have it on my calendar, and Charity, and I.
So if we
can
would
represent.
you send out? I guess if we want to participate and support you in this effort, how do we do that? Is that something that you'll send out information on, or?
Well, yeah. So this is in my mind, we would, Charity and I will get an outline together, kind of high level with some bullets, and then get feedback from the committee, and then do a more like comprehensive draft. Again, circulate that around. And then when it gets to the committee meeting where we need to be more formal about it, then hopefully we can just say, yes, like this is the report that we stand behind. But that's a month away, and we have to have an agenda publicly posted a week before the meeting. So that gives us 3 weeks to do this, which is possible, but Kat floated the idea. Kat and I talked about the possibility of adding another meeting in May, which would mainly, the idea would be in part to like create another date for this board report to land, but also have a bit more time for the district to feed us information that we can report on, and for progress that we could just kind of shine a light on better. Some of the Echo Northwest work will probably be really helpful to feed into this board report. So that was in the kind of next steps or other business. I wanted to float that with everybody and see how folks felt about that. I think what would make the most sense date-wise would be May 25th, which is the 4th Thursday. Just because we've been meeting on Thursdays, it seems like those are generally available for people. And also for the other subcommittees, like it might be nice to have another opportunity to put our heads together on work in that area. But what do people think about that? Like any other comments about the board report and that process? And of course, Charity and I would, love for other people to join the subcommittee and dig in a little bit further, or we can do what I mentioned and just circulate drafts as we have them.
Can I ask you a question, like a very honest question? I will help if you need help. It sounds like maybe there's a big ask here, and some more hands on this would be helpful. Is that fair to say? So I guess I'm saying, like, if you would like help, I'm willing to participate and help get whatever needs done.
Thanks. I think it would be nice to have a third person to just share ideas and experience. Yeah. Thanks, Angela.
I think it's a great idea. I would really love another meeting after we bring the budget information back. I'm sure it will fit. You'll have a space in the report for it. But it would be really great to get some feedback on that and have an opportunity to make those changes before the June 12th meeting. So I'm in favor of it.
That sounds good. So then conceptually at the April meeting, we'd have a bit more time or space. And the subcommittee should definitely like send a note to Kat and I and say, hey, we'd like whatever it is, 10, 15, 20 minutes on the agenda to talk about and whatever it is, whatever item that you want to bring to the table. And then, okay, is there anyone who feels like it's too much? And please be honest, like to add another meeting. It's more than we signed up for. It was supposed to be quarterly, but we're just kind of like last quarter heavy, I think. And I'm guessing the summer will be quieter meeting wise for us.
Sorry, my sound just cut out for like 5 minutes. So I don't know if you just asked me a question, but if you would mind repeating.
Oh, I was just wondering if there was anyone who couldn't make it, if we added a May meeting, or, you know, had anything else to add to that possibility, but it sounds like there's general support for it. So assuming we can get quorum, then I think we'll go ahead, Kat, if we can try and get a room and get that on people's calendars.
I just feel like there's so much work to get the committee off the ground, right? There's like this starting phase, the first templates, the first work. It's fine by me to put in a little more time and, you know, just to get that off the way we all want to feel successful when we go to report.
Yeah, there's a lot of foundational work this year for sure. Okay, well, the only other item we have is next steps, which is that was the next step that I had on my mind. Anybody else have something else they wanted to discuss tonight?
I just wanted to share real quick that we are hosting, I mentioned this last time, but we're hosting a spring climate summit on April 24th. And it's going to be at the PSU Smith Memorial Student Union building from 9 to 3:30. And we are going to have about 270 high schoolers there, and it's going to be really exciting. So with some student speakers and great, you know, just community partners and breakout sessions. So I'll send you all a formal email invite, but I wanted to offer, if any of you would like to come and be a volunteer and just help and experience the event, we'll need people to help kind of like usher folks and, you know, get people seated and, you know, check people in and stuff like that. But mostly just to get to be a part of the energy and the excitement of seeing what all of this work looks like when we get to bring community together on the ground. I wanted to be able to extend that invite to all of you if you're available. So save the date and we'll get that. I'm putting together more clear roles and kind of what that ask would look like, but wanted to plant that seed and keep an eye out for that email.
April 24th?
April 24th. Yep. It's a Monday, right after Earth Day. So it should be good. Yeah. And the other thing I was going to mention, just as like a neat update, is that the PSEF climate investment plan came out. Charity, thank you for sending that. Jane, also you mentioned that to me too, and includes a part about schools in there and allocating funding specifically in looking at schools as climate partners. And I had the opportunity to participate in their climate resilience hub roundtable and just kind of talk about what that looks like to have a couple, you know, spaces that can meet multiple needs in the community around our climate resilience and climate justice needs. So I just wanted to mention that's a really exciting update that came out, and look forward to collaborating with the other districts in the area to talk about what we can do to really intentionally move this work forward. So those are my updates and sort of next steps.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. Well, if there last chance if anybody has any other comments. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for the evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.
I just wanted to specifically ask if Richard, as the student voice in the room, had anything that he wanted to add.
Hey everyone, I'm just the student representative here for the CCRC, and I just thought that just listening to everyone present and everything like that, I thought that it was really great work, and I hope that I can continue to be a part of this.
Thanks, Richard. And thanks, Hannah, for calling on Richard. I was wondering if he was still in the cry, but I'm glad you gave him a chance to comment and contribute. All right, well, good night, everybody. We'll see you oh, Barbie, you have something?
I put something in the chat for you, Jane. I'm sorry, I was looking for it. I'm actually working on a report right now, and I'm using this format. I love it, and it's the Brookings report. And so I just thought I'd share a link, so maybe it can give you an idea, but it's a really great format. It's very nice, and I think it might be something you could be interested in. So I put the link in there for you.
Awesome, thank you. All ideas are welcome. All right. Oh, yeah, one more thing.
I do have one idea, which, the EPA has released a very large amount of funding. And there are a lot of opportunities for funding specifically around this work. Kat's shaking her head. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. And, where I work, we are doing the same work. I work for the Port of Portland, and obviously we're focusing on economic development. My work is specializing with an equity lens, and in terms of, are there opportunities for partnership? There are. The grants, they're specifically written for large public agencies like the school district and the Port of Portland to come together and partner with community groups centering around a whole host of the areas that we're specifically addressing. So I think that, and I would love to maybe connect with Eco Northwest and Kat, and maybe this is a conversation offline to say, here are the opportunities. Here are some options. Obviously, after we get the inventory back and we have more of a report from Eco Northwest, I think that'll inform opportunities. But I think that there is some significant funding that can help fund strategies that we're looking at. So hate to put it at the end of the meeting, but I think along with what Charity shared, I think that when we talk about funding opportunities and increasing education around green jobs, there are some apps, and I actually worked with Chitra Kumar. She's the deputy director at the EPA. So her and I had long discussions about what that looks like in communities. So not to throw it at the end, but I wasn't sure if we were ready for it yet. But now I'm really excited to hear that the report's coming. And that's really kind of the next step to securing the funding, if there is interest.
Following the DEQ climate protection plan too is a really important source of funding that will be coming online soon. That is statewide level funding. And I'm on the Equity Advisory Committee on that program. So I usually kind of in the know.
I love that. And I think just being ready and poised to be ready to deploy when opportunities become available through having strategies already in place, that we're just waiting for the funding. We're just waiting for the opportunity, but we have our partners, we have our objectives, the strategies, and really all those base pieces that you're plugging in for grants, those boilerplate things, and all the data.
I'm very excited about all this. Thank you for sharing all that. I think you're spot on about the opportunity for partnerships. And I think that'll just help with, especially what a great economic boost for a whole community to be able to get some of these awards and, you know, combine community partnerships and serve our just all of our different communities. I just use that word a bunch, but you know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's like, that's kind of the hope with having this clear path too, of like really looking seriously at how much this is all going to cost, is be like, okay, we can handle this with our budget. Now let's have these different projects and priority for grants so that we can get ready for those. And then like, we'll go try and go after this funding, all that. So I think that all just this strategy is ideal. And I think it's all coming together at just the right time. So excited to see what we can do together.
Okay, well, thanks again, everybody, for sharing your resources. And with that, we'll sign off, say goodnight. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.